Welcome officials from Treasury and Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. I understand that information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses appearing before a Senate committee has been provided to you. For the Hansard record, could you please state your name and the capacity in which you appear before us today?
Thanks, Chair. I'm Mahita Zahid, First Assistant Secretary, Labour Market, Environment, Industry and Infrastructure Division within Treasury.
It's almost as big as the former department. So.
Damien Mullally, Assistant Secretary of the Industry and Infrastructure Branch.
Nick Mowbray, Director, Infrastructure, Transport and Communications Unit in the same division.
So 3 from Treasury. Where is Prime Minister and Cabinet? Ladies?
Norella Teddy, First Assistant Secretary of the Industry, Infrastructure, Environment Division. Christina in PMC.
In PMC.
Apologies. Christina Garvin, also from Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Thank you. And what's your role, Ms Garvin?
Assistant Secretary of the Infrastructure, Regional and Transport Branch.
Thank you. We'll go to questions. Senator Birmingham.
Thank you. To both departments, were either of you consulted either by other departments or your ministers in relation to the request by Qatar for increased air service rights?
So we might agree that Treasury goes first,
There you go.
just freeze. So, Senator, no, we were not consulted on the Qatar decision by the department.
And Prime Minister and Cabinet was not consulted either.
So neither of you were consulted by the department. Are either department aware of your ministers being engaged by Minister King in any way during the decision-making process?
So, Senator, as far as I'm aware, the Treasurer was not consulted on the decision.
Any of your ministers?
Not as far as we were. So, not Assistant Minister Lee or Assistant Treasurer Jones.
And I'm not aware of the Prime Minister's being consulted on the decision.
All right. Can we take that on notice across both departments, please, as to what discussions occurred between ministers, with any Treasury ministers or with the Prime Minister from Minister King, or what discussions occurred with any Treasury Minister's officers or the Prime Minister's office in particular, with Minister King or her office.
Senator, can I just clarify that's prior to the decision being made?
Yes, please. During the period...
The long period.
Okay.
The 11-month period from August last year to July this year, during which the request from Qatar sat for 6 of those 11 months in Minister King's office with seemingly no departmental engagement whatsoever.
Senator, happy to take that on notice. As I've said, our understanding is that there were no
My
discussions.
request was for the departments to take that on notice. I didn't expect you to be able to provide that. I just hope that your ministers, particularly the Prime Minister's office, are far more transparent than we've discovered Minister King's office to be in her unhelpfulness with the department today. To that end, what engagement between Qantas and Treasury ministers or Treasury ministers' officers is the department aware of during that 11-month period?
So, Senator, we're aware there have been meetings with Qantas and the Treasurer's office and the Treasurer. Those discussions weren't in relation to Qatar, as far as we're aware, or at least another briefing that the department provided to support meetings were in relation to Qatar, but there were discussions around other issues with Qantas.
Okay. Again, let's take it on notice for Treasury ministers as to whether those Treasury ministers or their officers had any engagement with Qantas during that 11-month period between August last year and July this year, and in particular whether the matter of Qatar's request was discussed at all in any of those engagements. unsurprisingly to the Prime Minister and in particular the Prime Minister's office, what awareness does PM&C have of their engagements with Qantas over that timeline?
We're not aware of the Prime Minister's office having any engagement with Qantas over that period of time in relation to the decision. I think Ms.
What
Garber,
about
correct me if I'm
engagement
wrong.
with Qantas?
So PMC have prepared event briefs where Qantas may have been at those events.
Let's go through those.
Sure, we can do that. PMC prepared events for the Western Sydney Airport event.
Just the dates too, Ms. Lichine.
Yes, so 8th of June.
Yep.
Yes,
2023?
Yes, sorry, 2023.
Yeah, we're working backwards.
Yep, and that was at the Western Sydney Airport. Qantas were there. Qantas Group were there in attendance. There was on the 14th of August. There was the launch of the Qantas Yes campaign. We provided a briefing. We did not provide briefing to that.
Who did?
We did not provide briefing for that one.
Who would have provided the briefing for the Prime Minister to the Yes launch? That was a pretty big deal.
PMC did not provide briefing for that.
No, I know that. Who did?
I don't know, Senator.
Right.
And then there was, on the 6th of August, we were requested for a few dot points in relation to a dinner at APH in relation to the outgoing CEO's career.
And what was the nature of the outgoing CEO's dinner? Was it just a farewell, Alan, or...?
I'd ask Ms Garber. I don't think we're aware of what that dinner was.
Who attended that dinner?
We're not aware of the context. We just asked for some dot points in relation to his career.
Right, I might seek that brief.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yep,
on notice.
we can do that. Yep. And then I think I'll just ask Ms Garber, was that the other dates?
8th of June, the 14th of August.
Yep. 6th
and
of
the
August.
6th of August.
And I'm just trying to think here. Oh, and we provided, our speech writing team provided input to a speech for the Qantas Gala dinner on the 31st of March.
And what about the Qatar Airways application was August last year? So so the Prime Minister hadn't, or PM&C wasn't asked to do an event brief or a meeting brief for the PM with respect to Qantas, other than those that you've mentioned?
That's correct.
Since August last year?
That's my understanding, yes.
And they're both event briefs and meeting briefs?
Event briefs these were.
And what are the meeting briefs?
We haven't provided any meeting briefs.
Right, okay.
Thank you. So, what knowledge did PM&C have any knowledge of any other discussions or engagements between the Prime Minister and Qantas in the 11-month period from August last year to July this year?
No, Senator, we have no knowledge.
Okay. You can take on notice and provide the committee with details of any engagements or discussions the Prime Minister had with any representatives of Qantas during that 11-month period, and whether any of those discussions or engagements had any element of discussion that related to the Qatar request. What knowledge does PM&C have of any engagement between the Prime Minister's office and Qantas during that 11-month period between July last year and August this year?
We have no knowledge of that engagement.
Okay. Same question to take on notice again,
Sure.
please. Could you ascertain from the Prime Minister's office what discussions and engagements any member of the Prime Minister's office had with Qantas during that 11-month period, and whether any of those discussions related in any way to the Qatar request? And can I ask, why don't you have any of those answers today?
So we're not aware of. We haven't been asked for. PMC has not been asked for any briefing, and we're not aware of any meetings.
Yes, but you've prepared to appear today?
Sorry, Senator?
As officials within the department, you prepared to appear today? You prepared folders of information, your teams did. You considered what questions might be asked?
Yes, that's correct, Senator. But like I said, we're not aware of any. We are not aware of, and we don't have any briefings and aware of.
Did you contemplate asking the Prime Minister's office in advance?
So that you could answer questions?
As my evidence stands, we are not aware of any meetings.
I appreciate that. Did you contact the Prime Minister's office in advance of today's hearing to ask them to provide you with any information about the Prime Minister's meetings or contacts or his office's meetings or contacts with Qantas?
We did not. No, we did not.
Did PMC, the department, contact the Prime Minister's office with respect to your attendance at this hearing today?
We let the Prime Minister's office know that we're attending. But other than that, we have prepared. And
we've had department officials here this morning who are getting texts directly from their minister's office, political staff, on how they should and shouldn't answer questions. So the question Senator Birmingham's asking is that's what we've been experiencing this morning.
So, as I said, we're not aware of any briefings, and we have not provided any briefings for the Prime Minister's office in relation to their engagement with Qantas. Qatar Airways
representatives yesterday said...
Just a clarification. I understood the evidence, and we can go back on handset on this, but I understood the evidence from...
Ms Purvis-Smith?
Ms Purvis-Smith, was that it was from somebody within her department, after, if that's what I understood.
Quoting the Minister's office. Yep.
No, but it wasn't directly. You said it was the text referred directly from the Minister's office.
Through one of her staff. It was a direct...
I believe it started with the words MO
said. OK, so we can check on Hansard. But
why don't we?
Qatar Airways representatives yesterday said they'd met the Prime Minister at an event called the PM's dinner. Did PM&C prepare advice on that dinner for the Prime Minister that was also attended by Qatar Airways?
No, we did not. No, we did not.
Do you know what date that dinner was?
No, I don't.
So how do you know if you provided advice for it?
We've looked at what we've provided advice, and as I've said in my evidence, the briefs that I've gone through, that's what we've provided advice for.
But they were for Qantas. I'm now talking about a dinner where Qatar Airways was in attendance.
I'd have to take it on notice, but I'm not aware.
And actually went up and spoke to the Prime Minister directly. And I would assume if you're attending a dinner with serious and important stakeholders, ministers usually receive from their department a little cheat sheet, usually with a photo, about information of attendees.
So I'm not aware. I can take that on notice, but I don't believe we have provided a briefing.
Have there been any briefings provided or any engagement, to your knowledge, between the Prime Minister and Qatar Airways or Qatari government representatives?
To my knowledge, no.
Treasury?
None at all?
We're not aware of any.
Okay. Anything between the Prime Minister's office and Qatar Airways or Qatari authorities?
To my knowledge, no. I'm not aware.
No.
Again, let's take both of those on notice, please, and double check. Did PM&C have officials reviewing or monitoring yesterday's hearings?
PMC staff are listening, yes.
Yes. So PM&C staff would have heard the reference to the dinner that Qatari Airways indicated they spoke to the Prime Minister at?
I did not hear that.
I did, Senator, and that was within our team as well. This is the first time we had heard about that dinner.
Okay. Did you seek any information yesterday as to what that dinner was?
No, we were not able to, Senator. We do not have any further information on that dinner.
But did you seek it out of the PMO? Did you ask what this dinner was?
No, we haven't yet, Senator.
Virgin also tabled a letter to the Transport Minister regarding the decision to reject Qatar Airways' additional flights, and the Prime Minister was CC'd in on that letter. What is the status of that letter in the department?
I'll ask Ms Garvin.
Well, no action is being pursued on that letter, given the Prime Minister was copied on along with other ministers. We understand that from the department that the Minister King's office will respond to that letter.
So sorry, just say that again.
We understand from the Department of Infrastructure that they will handle the response to that letter.
So Minister King will be responding, and has the Prime Minister been made aware of that letter?
The letter was sent to the Prime Minister's office as the Prime Minister was...
From PMC?
Not from PMC.
But when was it logged in your register?
We will have to take that on notice on when we actually receive the letter.
So you were listening yesterday. Virgin said they CC'd the Prime Minister in on this letter. You didn't think to check the Coro register?
We will need to get on notice. I don't think I have the dates in here of when we actually received it in our system, Senator. We can get that for you pretty quickly, though.
Why hasn't the Prime Minister responded to Virgin, given the level of concern in the community on this decision?
Well, Senator, as you said, that letter, the Prime Minister was CC'd on that letter. So Minister King, who was the decision maker for this decision, she is responding to Virgin, to the Virgin CEO.
The Prime Minister confirmed he met with the CEO of Virgin Australia after the Minister for Transport had made the decision. What briefing did PMC provide for that meeting?
We did not provide any briefing.
How was the Prime Minister briefed or prepared for that meeting?
I'm not sure, Senator. We did not provide any briefing for that.
Again, can we ask the PMO, please, as to what briefing or information they prepared for the Prime Minister for that meeting, and who they consulted in doing so?
Treasury. We just had a brief tabled from the Infrastructure and Transport Department into the ACCC's final quarterly report on airline competition. Isn't it the case, Ms Zahid, that the ACCC recommended to your minister in that report, or the responsible minister, that this function continue?
So, Senator, I think we have a copy of the report. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was a recommendation. They noted the benefits of the work that they were doing in relation to the monitoring exercise. I'll check with my colleagues, but I had a scan at it when I was outside. I don't think there's a formal recommendation in that report.
Not a formal recommendation as such, Senator. However, the ACCC did conclude in its final dot point that in that report that a further direction to the ACCC would provide continued transparency and so forth of the industry.
I've written to the Treasurer on this. He responds, unlike other ministers, but I know Senator Smith, all the way from WA, the Shadow Minister for Competition, has some questions with this in this regard. Senator Smith, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just some questions to Treasury. What advice has the Treasury provided to the Assistant Minister for Competition or the Treasurer in regards to the continuation of the ACCC monitoring regime in regards to airlines, and that's the quarterly report regime that was operating up until June of this year?
Thanks, Senator. So the ACCC monitoring, as you're aware, was a time-limited direction. So the direction lapsed at the end of June. The fact that the report was ceasing, or that program of work for the ACCC was concluding, was considered in the regular way we consider ACCC functions. So it was considered as part of budget processes where you look at what's lapsing in the program of work, as is usual practice with considering tasking the ACCC with specific programs of work. We look at what else is in the system. So as you would have heard from the department, there is the aviation white paper and the green paper process, which is looking at competition. So the decision was made not to issue a new direction and let that program of work, the monitoring, lapse as initially intended in the direction.
So how was that decision made?
So it was a decision not to, it wasn't because it was a lapsing program. That gets flagged up in our usual way we look at ACCC's future budgets, their program of work, what directions they have. It's part of the oversight function of ACCC more broadly. So it would have come up in that context and considered in that program. There wasn't a specific piece of work done to advise either the Assistant Minister or the Treasurer on that monitoring continuing, noting that the government had other processes around the Green Paper and White Paper that looked at competition.
Did the ACCC more formally propose the continuation of the regime?
I'll check with my colleagues, but I'm not aware of the ACCC specifically writing to the Assistant Minister or the Treasurer seeking to continue that. So as far as I'm aware, that wasn't a formal request.
That's correct.
Was it part of the ACCC's broader budget request?
So, Senator, the general process with considering departmental budgets and budgets for agencies that we oversight is to have a list of lapsing inquiries, and the government considers that in the usual budget processes of priorities and departmental resourcing and agency resourcing. So it would have been considered as part of that, but it was not a specific proposal that went to ERC, or it wasn't a specific recommendation, and there was, as far as I'm aware, not a specific request from the ACCC in this particular regard.
Is that because to run this function now the ACCC wouldn't be large enough to warrant consideration by ERC?
So, Senator, it depends on whether there is a budget.
$50 million ask.
So it depends on whether there's any budget associated with it. If there is additional funding to be provided, generally those matters go to a decision process, whether it's ERC or letters for agreement between the Finance Minister and the PM. If it's a direction that doesn't have any departmental resourcing associated with it, it would not necessarily need to get considered as part of that. Generally, when the government tasks the ACCC to do a monitoring exercise, it does look at overall resourcing needs, and it considers as part of that prioritisation and whether additional funding is required.
How does Treasury characterise stakeholder views in regards to the usefulness of the ACCC monitoring regime?
So, Senator, if we are providing specific advice, and as I've said earlier, this was not a case where there was specific advice.
No, excuse me, with all due respect, each public hearing has had a focus on this extension of the ACCC monitoring regime. I'm assuming that Treasury and also the ACCC have been monitoring this process. I have a view, and I can easily characterise for you stakeholder views in regard to the usefulness of additional transparency, continuing scrutiny. I'm interested in how Treasury characterises the views of stakeholders on the ACCC on the extension of the ACCC regime.
Thank you, Senator. So, in this particular case, because a briefing was not provided to the Treasurer specifically on this, we did not characterise stakeholder views because we didn't provide any specific briefing. If we were to provide a briefing on, and I'm speaking now generally in relation to a monitoring exercise or the Treasurer making a decision on directing the ACCC to examine a particular area or undertake monitoring, we would reflect in that briefing different stakeholder views, the benefits, the costs, and what other processes may exist in the system looking at the similar issues.
Thank you. Have you been identified by any stakeholder other than Qantas that is opposed to the extension of the ACCC monitoring regime? I might have to add Minister Lee and Treasurer Chalmers to that list, but I'd rather not. There will be a vote in the Senate with the Senate resumes shortly. Can you identify any other stakeholder other than Qantas who is opposed to the extension of the ACCC monitoring?
So, Senator, largely we've heard stakeholder views through this process. We regularly engage with stakeholders in the aviation sector.
We are up against a timeline, and so if you could just go to Senator Smith's
So
direct
not beyond
question.
what we've heard in this committee.
Sorry, say that again.
Not beyond what we've heard in this committee.
Right. That would reflect what we've heard in this committee. Senator Smith?
Thank you very, very much. Has Minister Lee or the Treasurer sought advice from the Treasury around competition and consumer issues in the aviation sector over the last 6 months?
So I'm not aware of the Treasurer or Assistant Minister Lee seeking specific briefing on competition and consumer issues. As the committee's already heard, we have the Competition Task Force that's been established within Treasury, and we are working, and the Competition Task Force is working with the department in relation to the Green Paper and the White Paper process to feed into analysis, feed in thinking around competition. Expect in due course those matters will be raised with our ministers. We're not there yet, so we haven't provided any specific briefing on that.
Senator Smith, this will be the last question.
It will be. The Senate has agreed for the order for the production of documents in regards to correspondence, emails, briefs, etc., on the matter of the ACCC monitoring report. The Treasurer has not complied with that OPD as required by the Senate order. Minister Gallagher, representing the Treasurer, will be asked to appear. The Senate has agreed that she's required to attend and provide an explanation. Will that OPD be fulfilled before the Senate resumes at 10 a.m. on the 16th of October?
Senator, my understanding is that's been considered by the Treasurer's office.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to the speech written by PMC, or that you provided some advice on the 31st of March 2023 to the Prime Minister, where the Prime Minister says, "I knew I could pick up the phone and Qantas would swing into action getting Australians to safety." Is that something the department wrote, or is that something the PMO wrote?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator. I don't have the speech
Honestly.
here. I don't have the speech here.
Three event briefs, and you don't have a copy of the 3 event briefs in your folder.
I don't have the copy of the briefs, nor do I have a copy of the speech, and I'd have to go back and see what the version that we sent from the office, from the department, up to the office.
Thank you. I'd appreciate you tabling what you sent up to the office,
we can do that.
and then we can understand who's got whose mobile using it most. Now, Senator Birmingham, very quickly. Senator Sheldon, do you have any questions?
Okay. Are PMC officials aware of the letter dated 13 September sent from the Chair, Senator Mackenzie, to Professor Davis?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yes. And that letter, which foreshadows the appearance of PMC at this committee and included an attachment of materials that would be expected by the committee?
Yes, Senator.
Yes.
Yep.
And that attachment, the very first part of that attachment, what communications occurred between the Prime Minister's office regarding the Qatar Airways request for extra flights into Australia and any of the following? And then it lists 6 entities, starting with Qantas and working through to Minister King's office. What did PMC do to prepare to answer those questions?
So, Senator, we have not provided any briefings to the Prime Minister's office in relation to any of those A to E.
Right. So in future, if Senate committees want PMC to check what engagement the Prime Minister's office has had, do we need to expressly ask PMC to consult with the Prime Minister's office beforehand? Because apparently all PMC will do is do a database search of their records.
So, Senator, I've prepared based on the questions that are here, and so, as I said, we have not provided the Prime Minister. We have not provided the Prime Minister's office with any briefings in relation to those.
Yeah, so you've checked your records, done nothing to check with the Prime Minister's office. Would PMC prefer it if this committee decided to summons the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff to appear? Would that be PMC's preference?
I've answered your question, Senator.
Yeah, well, they're unsatisfactory answers. It's unsatisfactory preparation by PMC, and it creates a type of risk in terms of how Senate committees may respond in future, and so I will be following up with PMC as to how they prepare for Senate committees in the future. Very quickly, has the Prime Minister had any engagement with the Qatari government or representatives of the Qatari government since he's been Prime Minister?
Not to my knowledge, but I will take that on notice.
Thank you.
Of course, Senator Sheldon.
But after you, Chair.
No, you go.
Thank you,
Because
Chair.
I've got to thank Hansard and everything.
Thanks, Chair. Do we have on record the aviation was always in the competition review?
I'd have to refer that to my colleagues within
Yes.
Treasury.
So, Senator, the competition review is not a report that's going to be done, and that's made clear in the Treasurer and the Assistant Minister Lee's announcement. We've been working very closely, and the competition review team's been working closely with the department on the green paper process since the teams kind of got together. It's still a relatively new team. We're working through the aviation white paper process, but that's been the case pretty early on from when that team got pulled together in Treasury, and my team's been working with the department in relation to the green paper on competition issues from a very early stage.
So aviation was always in the competition review, if I understand what you're saying, or I'm misunderstanding it?
Yes, so it was never scoped out of the competition review.
That's correct, yes.
The competition review is still quite new. They're still figuring out exactly what they're going to do. That's working through. The Treasurer's announced some key areas.
So
that
reports that it was ever scoped out are inaccurate, or assertions made that it was...
it was never scoped out.
Never scoped out, thank you. And thanks for the Department for the hard work they've done this morning, and over to you, Chair.
Thank you. I was going to close.
Just before you close down, this is not for the officials, but while Senator Smith's still on the line so he doesn't hang up, I'd like to request a private meeting at the conclusion of the public meeting, very briefly, for the committee to consider inviting Transport Minister King to appear before the committee.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Well, that it being just after 12, I would like to draw this hearing to a conclusion. Thank all the departmental officials who have appeared and all the witnesses, to Hansard and Broadcasting, to the Secretariat. If any questions have been taken on notice, and they'll be flooding in because we just don't have enough time with you, Tuesday the 3rd of October, we're seeking those to be brought back. I guess what has been, just extending Senator Birmingham's commentary, the protection racket has continued, and unfortunately our public service has been dragged into protecting Qantas on behalf of this government. We will be summoning Alan Joyce, as he seems to be the only one that can answer so many of this committee's inquiries, on his return to Australia. This committee now, the hearing is now adjourned.